My name is Peter Goodman. I am president of the Education Alumni Association. And David, where's David? David Covington is the president of the overall Alumni Association. And upon your graduation, you will become members of the Alumni Association. And the first year, free. And we hope you take advantage of all the programs that we have and become an engaged member. I started off a few years ago, like you, looking for a job, and found one, and a second one, and a third one, and eventually found a school that I loved and loved me. And I taught social studies in high school for many, many years, and then got involved in the teachers union because it was exciting and I liked it. I did that until I decided I wanted to do something else in life, and began to work as a staff developer, working with schools and principals and superintendents. And again, hopefully as you work your way through the system, you gain skills and you want to pass them along. And then about a decade ago, someone said, oh, you should write a blog. And I said, what's that? And I got involved in the blogosphere. So for the past decade, every week I write a blog called Ed in the Apple, about the intersection of education and politics. Politics is involved in education? My God. So at any rate, keeps me busy. And just as those of us who have been around for a while do our best to make the system better, as soon as you start teaching, the kids who you're teaching are the next generation. They're going to make the city a better place. And it's our responsibility to give them whatever skills we can to make them successful in lives and to contribute to the world in which we live. And I've committed myself always to always remember that we owe to our predecessors that we could do these things, and then we owe it to ourselves to pass along whatever knowledge and skills all we have. And I'm sure that you'll feel the same way. And there's an anxiety now because you're leaving college and starting to work and might not have a real job yet. But over the next few months, you'll connect and you really love it. Let me start out first of all by introducing Dean Lamboy, who's the Dean of the School of Education.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
Okay. David Covington, who's head of the Alumni Association. And Superintendent Davenport, who could say a few words because he's the educational leader of District 5, which is, as he'll tell you, an extremely responsible job. I don't know how many kids you have, 20,000 or so?
Not that big.
Okay, but again, this city is made up of villages, and District 5 is one of the villages, and I guess you could say he's the mayor of the village. Superintendent?
Good afternoon. So, an overview of District 5, we have 23 schools. We have an arrangement of 11 elementary schools from pre-K to 5. We have 3 standalone middle schools, 4 K to 8s, and 4 6 to 12s. So we run the gambit. Not a lot of community school districts have high schools in their districts. That's why they're called really community school districts, because they're primarily pre-K through 8. And so what does that mean on our level? That means we have to be cognizant of all the rules and regulations, whereas some people just can only worry about, okay, I gotta worry about everybody. The plus for me was that I was a elementary school principal and a middle high school principal. So I do come to the table with understanding the complexities of a K to 12 foundation. And so when you go into teaching, I think you really have a perspective. You think you want to maybe be an elementary school teacher or a middle school teacher or a high school teacher. I never thought I'd be an elementary school principal. First of all, I never thought I'd be a teacher. So let's just get that clear. And one of the things about teaching, as you'll hear from our colleagues later, is that teaching is a profession, right? And it has to be treated as such. It can't be, let me just find me something to do in the middle, in the interim while I go look for a job, because you won't be successful and then the kids suffer. And it's about this profession that, as Peter stated, you're training the next generation. And so we're very cognizant about who we're putting in front of our students, because it's a lasting impression. If you're great, they're gonna remember it forever. If you're terrible, they're gonna remember it forever. And if you're terrible, you're gonna scar them. And so we really are trying to do our best to ensure that we not only get the right people, but make sure we do the right trainings to keep them updated on skills and different things in the profession so that they can be successful, because a successful teacher is a successful student, a successful principal, that makes me look good, and we have a successful system. And so, but we have a very good district. It's a challenging district, one with many shelters, domestic violence shelters, homeless shelters. We're sheltered out. Every shelter you could think of, we have it in our district. And our kids move from schools to schools, city to districts to districts. And so trying to keep them on task is very difficult. And you look at some of our performance areas and you may say, well, you guys aren't performing that well. But look what the challenges that we have to deal with, right? It's not so much that we're not performing that well. I think we're far beyond outperforming people based on what we're working with, and that is the deficits, mindsets, and getting our kids to school, because parents have so many other things that they're doing within our communities that oftentimes coming to school isn't the first priority. And we're also trying to change that mindset as well. So that's a little bit of an overview of what we're dealing with in District 5, but it's a phenomenal place to work.
Thank you. And Zena Myron-Burton is our union leader in the district, who works with the superintendent, try to create the best possible environment for teachers and children. And they have an extremely close working relationship, because, again, as the superintendent said, it's a challenging district, but we live in a challenging world. And I always say to people, it doesn't pay to complain about things you can't change. The world we live in, the things that we can change, work hard at it. People who complain about things, it doesn't change them. And to be honest, it's simply an exercise in futility. And there's enough futility in the world, like, the Mets didn't win the World Series, and the important stuff. So we always hope that the superintendent and the union person have a good collaborative working relationship, and in fact, that's the case. So what I'm going to do is, there are some questions that get asked all the time. We've been running this panel for years, but not for the last 3 years, for obvious reasons. So I'm going to pose a question to our panel. Why don't you tell us, before you answer, your name and school, so people will know where you come from and can remember. And one of the questions we always get, and tell us a snippet about your school. How do you select who to interview? Is there some special quality you're looking for? Is there something special I should put in my resume? Let me start.
Okay, so my name is Wanda Acevedo. I've been in the education field for 19 years, and this is my second year as a principal of PS 194, which is not too far from here. It's a pre-K to 5 school. Like Dr. Davenport explained, we have a very diverse population of children that have experienced a lot of adverse childhood experiences, including food insecurities, shelter insecurities. They've witnessed or experienced forms of domestic violence, so they do have a lot of trauma that they're bringing to the table. And to answer your question, one of the things that I definitely look for is compassion and the evidence of dedication to students, right? And that is usually most easily displayed in your cover letter, where you talk about what's your why and what is the impact that you want to have on children. And that is one of the qualities that really moves me.
Thank you. Yes?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Hazel from PSMS 46, home of the Tigers, Go Tigers. And so, we are PSMS 46. We are in the northern part of the district, all the way over, sometimes the forgotten section, but we're in the middle of the Polo Grounds. And the Polo Grounds has, we're Title I school, 93%. However, with all of everything that we experience in Polo Grounds, one of the things I look when I have teachers come to my school, high energy, very motivated to work with others. And so, yes, the cover letter is a huge part of what you need to show when you send like a cold email to someone. And special education background is always a great thing, even though I might not immediately need a special education teacher, but having that certification is a huge part of also what I look for. But a lot of what I interview pretty much everyone that sends me a resume. And I take the time, I do weekends, I do late, because I need to put the right people in front of my babies, and so making sure that, I find the right fit, and obviously, it does not always work out. However, we want to make sure that you're goal-oriented, you're outcome-oriented, and so I need people that have the same type of get it and go when you come into the interview. So please make sure, for me anyway, I need high energy, because you're going to need that working with children. They have just as much energy as you do, so you need to make sure that you can keep up.
Thank you. Yes?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me today. My name is Valerie Babb. I actually attended City College, and I am a hiring manager for a small independent charter school over on 111th between 5th and Lenox. It's a pre-K through 5th grade school that's 18 years old this year. And to answer that question, I would say, first off, I think that teaching is a calling. It's a gift. I was first introduced to education because my grandfather ran for school boards when they existed, and I grew up in District 6 in Harlem. And so my job was to be tasked with putting up flyers to let people know that school boards even existed, and then to phone bank when you actually picked up a phone to actually use a phone. And so I've been doing like advocacy and advocating for education for a long time, probably not even realizing that I was being set up to work in the field of education. My grandfather was beat by Senator Robert Jackson, so that's like my first like dipping your toe into the waters of education. And so I can certainly say, with watching my granddad, who was a math teacher, I can say that teaching is a calling and it is a gift. And because I am fortunate enough to hire teachers, and that's the only thing I need to focus on at work, I don't hire by myself, I hire with a team of people, because many different eyes are important for that process. And I think that when you're here right now, which is just 4 little years of your life, you're gonna be teaching longer than that. And it doesn't matter what you do, how great you are, you always have to come to a teacher, you always have to come to an educator, and all of the other people in the building that support those people who do their jobs. So I would say to you that the thing that I look for is passion, and I would agree with my colleague to the left. Energy, sort of, if you come in to any interview, it doesn't matter if you're teaching, if you sort of come in like, I could be here, I could not, nobody wants to work with anybody like that. But particularly children want to feel like they matter, and they want to feel like you want to be doing what you're doing. And even if you're doing that for a space and time in your life, they don't need to feel like ever like I'm only gonna be here for 2 years. So I would say that I'm looking for people who don't do a blanket, dear hiring manager, I saw your position, and then when I call them, they're like, yeah, what school is this? That sort of is very frustrating, because my job is literally to choose the people who are gonna be essentially with our children for more waking hours of the day than they are with their families. And so we want to treat it like it is something that is special, because it is and it's necessary.
Thank you very much. Yes?
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Heather John Baptist, principal of PS 36, 123rd in Amsterdam. We call the school on the rocks. 3K through 5. When I look at a resume, first of all, I need my name to be spelled correctly. Second of all, I need you to do your research on my school. So in your cover letter, it should have something to say about the research about my school. Third, I have a team who usually looks at the resumes, and I let my team choose the resumes, interview the teachers, and then I always make sure you do a demo lesson for me. Children could tell if you're in it for the money or if you actually care. We have a lot of special needs students and L students in my building, so having that special ed background and an ENL background is always helpful, because you could use those same strategies with all of the students. I need people who care, who will go that extra mile, and who are lifelong learners. We do not know everything, but as long as you're open into learning, and you are compassionate, and you care, because the children will pick it up first.
Thank you. The question came up, having knowledge of special education as a plus, which is a different certification area. And so, what does dual certified mean? And Nadine is a certification expert at the Teachers Union, at the UFT, who knows everything about certification, and there's a lot to know. So what does dual certification mean, and how does one achieve it?
Sure. So my name is Nadine Reese. I'm the Director of Certification and Licensing Services at the UFT. I taught for about 12 years. I was a career changer, but I did teach. I think that's important. My daily work is still informed by that experience. I was certified in, back then it was pre-K to 6, a permanent certificate. The certification regulations and rules changed in 2004. The assessments changed in 2014. But basically, and more schools are certifying teachers on a dual track. The difference between a gen ed and a special ed certification at the state level is 12 credits. Usually you already have 3 credits in students with disabilities, so it's an additional 9 sometimes. So you might already be on a dual track, but basically the state certificate, under New York State law, you have to be certified in order to teach in a public school anywhere in New York State. New York City is one of the few municipalities, probably one of 2 in New York State, that matches you with a license appointment code. You were on a probationary path with that license code. So when you're hired, it's really important that you understand which one you're hired under. And if you're hired under students with disabilities, 900B, for example, you want to make sure that the kids in front of you are students with disabilities and that you're not improperly placed, because that's going to impact your tenure at a later date. If you do become dually certified, I'll talk more about that in a second, just for a little bit. If you are dually certified, you're going to have a long, illustrious career. You may want to try different classrooms. If you're tenured in one license area, you have to agree to be reappointed. The principal has to agree as well. You're reappointed, and you are going to be probationary under that second license. So you might have 2 probationary periods. But again, if you're going to have a long, illustrious career, that's something I encourage. Some of my colleagues at the UFT don't. But what you have to understand is once you achieve tenure in one license area, you don't lose it unless some mitigating circumstances, mitigating is a bad word, I don't want to say heinous, but it is possible for you to run afoul. Oh, let's just say it that way. But if you're tenured in one license area and you become probationary in another, you have the protection of reverting back to that license area that you're tenured under. So you don't have to, don't make your decisions in fear. To be dually certified is simply that. You're on track for multiple certificates. If you are going to be graduating with one, there are different pathways at the state that you can achieve the additional certificate that you want. There are salary incentives with the DOE. And you have to understand that the UFT is 63 years old this year. Our working conditions are the students' learning conditions. And that was the motivation back in the day for our forebears who went on strike. Anyway, so I'm losing my train of thought a little bit, getting off the topic. But if you are
Salary incentive.
I was talking about, yes, salary incentives, thank you, I was talking about salary incentives. So if you graduate and you are duly certified in Gen Ed and say students with disabilities, you want to work on your 30 above your master's, because you have to get, in order to get your professional certificate, you need a master's degree, 3 years experience, a year of mentoring. In order to get the highest level salary at this point, you would need 30 credits above that master's degree. And the city created something that they called A+ credits, and that targets the shortage areas, ESL, students with disabilities. So you have a salary incentive, basically is what I'm saying, to get additional certificates. And some people get their 30 above by going the administrative route. So if you want to become an AP or a principal, then that's another certificate that you can pick up. I think I'm going to stop there, because I could go on.
If someone wants to contact you, Nadine, are you willing to give them your email address?
I meant to bring a bunch of cards to hand out like candy. So yeah, you can share that. I'll give it to you.
Give it to.
So it's
Oh, yeah, sorry, NREIS, like Sam, @uft.org. Your college also has a certification person. They're responsible for making the electronic recommendation to the state. So you'll likely be meeting with them at some point, and if you don't, then you want to make that appointment.
Give them your email again.
NREIS as in Sam, @uft.org.
Another question people have is, should I bring a portfolio of student work to an interview?
So that's definite, and as well, I would say also a lesson plan for that work, because one of the places that we spend a lot of time with our new teachers is to really develop that lesson plan. It's the blueprint for what you will be delivering in the classroom. So not just the portfolio, and please make sure you redact the student information. Lesson plan, student work, as well as if you have a video of even a small group or you teaching the lesson, that would be awesome too.
From the audience, I'm sure you have questions. Come now.
Don't be shy, that's not that type of job.
Yes.
My question is for you, I'm curious about whether you think dual certification is best gotten at the graduate level, when students have their provisional certification, and then when they go back to complete their master's, is that a better time to, move forward in dual certification or the extra 12 credit?
Some programs, more and more programs are doing the dual route. What are you guys on track for? Are you getting certified in what area? Are you all the same, or?
That's childhood.
She's doing childhood ed.
My students will be certified in
Childhood ed, grades 1 to 6?
Some are bilingual ed.
Okay.
Related to the TESOL program, et cetera.
Yeah.
But usually at the graduate level, or they turn around.
Sure.
and just-
Sure. Yeah, because you probably have a full course load currently as it is, so I would say it's, probably personal preference. If you are, the city maintains a list of license areas that from time to time there are hiring freezes under, and childhood ed grades 1 to 6 are one of those that do tend to come up against a hiring freeze. So I would just caution you against that. If you are interested in finding out, well, you'd have to wait until you get your recommendation for your first certificate. Get that in, make your application for your initial certificate. You can always then submit through the individual evaluation pathway another application for students with disabilities, grades 1 to 6. The state just created an all grades students with disabilities you can also apply for through the individual evaluation pathway. So that'll cost $100 versus $50, but the state will do an evaluation. They'll tell you exactly what you need. And in all likelihood, the difference between your students with disabilities 1 to 6 and your gen ed is going to be those 9 credits, because you probably already have at least one class. So I guess, it's going to depend on what district you're looking at, what their needs are, and whether or not you need to react to the marketplace by getting an additional certificate. You can wait until you start working on your master's degree if you don't, in my opinion, I would not recommend necessarily getting a master's degree in the same area, just like back before I became a teacher, like I changed careers like every 5 years. I reached the limit, I got bored. It's one thing that I didn't do with teaching, right? And I just, in a way, like it just came across it in a really nice way. So I would say, once you're working on your master's degree, you want to go for something different. The ESL certification there's not, I don't know, the requirements for an ESL certificate are not, you don't need to take a whole master's degree in that. I don't know if it's possible to do a dual master's. Actually, I'm just thinking of that now. But you can wait till you're getting your master's. Again, I think it all depends on what positions are available, which district that you want to work in, and do a little bit of research. The Department of Education has a wonderful website. Every single school has a separate website that you can find off of that. On the homepage of the DOE website, it'll say find a school. You can put in an address, see the schools in the area. Back in the day when I did it, I had to use a phone book, literally. I had to call the school, ask for the principal's name, how to spell it, and address it that way. So I didn't have that advantage. So you can learn a lot. There's student surveys, teacher surveys, a lot of information to gear your cover letter, and also to get an idea of what they're looking for.
Thanks. Yes,
So we will be graduating with our master's for secondary English, with no experience. So I was wondering, how could we stand out against kids that have, 5 years of experience versus just us who have just graduated?
Well, I know that the DOE is always looking for substitute teachers, and I've interviewed people who have been subbing on a part-time basis to get that experience while they're in school and really speak to the impact that they've had during that. And then also making the most out of your student teaching experiences. A lot of times it's easy to not take advantage of everything that you can do. So if your cooperating teacher is not giving you the experiences that you need, advocate for yourself and say, this is small group work is something that I really want to get better at. Can I take a small group? Or looking at that is something I want to get better at. Can I sit down with you? So that way you are able to talk through those things.
I would also say, look in middle schools for that experience. I know with 7 to 12, you guys tend to want to go to high school, but I'm a 3K to 8, and so having an English specialist is really a commodity, right? And so you definitely can stand out. Don't just look in the high school. High schools have like 5 of those people. But definitely, reach out to middle school, because we do need to kind of develop and hone those areas of specialization. And oftentimes, we don't have the appropriate certified staff to fill that role.
And I would also add, don't sleep on the summer months. I think people sort of don't think outside the box in education. I'm a career changer, so I came from corporate law, where, you think of any different way to sort of win. But I think in education, I found that there's a lot of rules, and so people don't go outside the box. It's almost like frowned upon. But I think that the summertime is a great time to get a step up. There are a lot of schools who, I don't know about my colleagues in the Department of Education, but I know in independent schools, private schools, there are all kinds of schools out here. Maybe saying I am interested in seeing if I can work with you throughout the summer or volunteer with you throughout the summer. It's a short time. No one wants to get out of college and work for free. It's a great place to get some experience on your resume, and that is maybe something that folks have not thought about, but I would say think about it or call me.
And you'd be surprised how many principals are looking for brand new teachers. So don't limit yourself.
Cheaper.
Yes, you are.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
I would just say what I always look for a new teacher, but don't be generic. First of all, you got to realize we get a bunch of resumes, and she's good. She's gonna read them all. I'm not. So you have to send me something that makes me say, "Oh, let me check this one out." So if you're a music teacher and you don't send a video of what you can do, then that's a waste. If you're an art teacher and you don't send something in the arts that you've been able to do and be able to, that's a waste of time. If you are in a specialty area, if the social, you want to send me something that will say, this might work. So try to be original, and, everyone sends in these resumes and, but I don't, a lot of us don't have time to read them all, right? Some people just aren't as dedicated. I'm speaking truthfully. We just aren't as dedicated, so, how people get me? They get me on LinkedIn. They find me on LinkedIn. And every now and then I'll check it out, like, who's gonna go through the hassle of looking me up on LinkedIn and go through all the spill? And I'm like, if you're gonna do all that, okay, let me just see who you are. And then if I like what I saw, I'll email back and give you information on how to reach me. So there's other ways you could get out there and get out to certain people where you wanna be. And I think using different vehicles is definitely the way to go now. Taking advantage of all the technological devices out there that you could reach people with and putting things together. That's what's going to make you different than somebody else.
I remember hiring one of my English teachers, and she brought in her newspaper work she did. So that for me was just stand out, because you always want to see the real life application. We talk about it in teaching a lot, about how do these subjects really apply to real life. And so those are sending samples of that, if you're an English major or graduating with that license, is something that would stand out for me, and did.
Yes,
I'm looking at the questions that people sent.
sure.
There's one that no one asked yet, may I?
Absolutely.
articulate it? So, someone asked about getting a job at a private or charter school, so it might be helpful to compare the processes for a charter school, applying to a charter school versus applying to a DOE,
Okay.
a non-charter school. But
At
in
least the charter
comparison.
process. So the process is very much like applying for any other kind of job. I would encourage you to look at a website called nyccharterschools.org, because it lists all the charter schools across the city, so you can figure out where you want to be, figure out if they have a specialty that you like, or that is in line with what your own personal mission is. I think that people who work in education seem to probably have personal missions, and then just send your resume in, and I think, just like they said, sort of try to stand out. I think it's okay to look at it as sales, because when you're sending your resume out, you are in fact selling your capabilities. And so you want to make sure that you're standing out, and don't, I can tell you that the summertime is not a slower time, but a time where we can kind of take a breath, and we're looking, like sort of looking outside the box if people are not staffed up already. I have a pretty low turnover rate, teacher turnover rate, or a high retention rate. And that's because we've done some things to like check our own selves, to figure out like, hey, the same way that you guys are, I'm interviewing you, you guys are interviewing us as well as an organization. And I think that once we took that approach to things, and it was a give and take, and not just, I'm the commander, I'm the decider, everything stops with me. Because people have choices. This is New York City. So you have the huge Department of Education where there are a lot of choices and a lot of amazing schools. My own kids go to Department of Education schools, but they went through charter for elementary. My daughter goes to MS 243, which is the center school. It's an amazing school, which is having a lot of just like a fabulous middle school experience, which is like, people don't get to say that often. But I would say apply. And don't be afraid to call the school. I think that people don't cold call, they just sort of like press buttons and use technology. Like, if he's saying to you so clearly, like, I'm not gonna pay attention to everything, you should damn well listen to that, because we all feel that way. And some of us are not, I'm raw enough to say it to you, I'm super busy, so like sometimes you have to call me and say, hey, I met you, I went to City College, so obviously I'm gonna be looking for resumes. And if you don't send me a resume by next week, I'm gonna think you're not interested. Right, and so maybe I filled that position now because I
Can
think
people send a paper resume as well as an electronic one?
yeah, that still works, but I mean, if we're being honest, I only take paper resumes when I'm at job fairs. Just, just protect the environment, I think, so. Yeah, just upload it through the website, because when you have resumes so many different places, they get lost. Or I lose them. Let me not speak for anybody else.
Do you look for people with technology skills?
Yes, absolutely. Definitely, yes.
What's an example of a particular technology skill that you'd be attracted to?
So we're a STEAM-based school, and so Promethean, so those interactive whiteboards, I mean, everybody can, navigate an iPad at this point. I like to give math to my more tech proficient teachers, and then PCs to ones who are still, not as adept. And so, being able to just very fluidly navigate the Promethean board, we have smart boards. We don't have any boards anymore in our building, but being able to navigate and utilize that, PowerPoints and Google Slides and things like that, Google Classroom is something that I definitely want you guys to be very adept at. And of course, if you're not, there's always a learning curve, and we'll get you caught up as quickly as possible. However, Elmo's, those are all tools that you can use, and just be mindful, it's an interactive whiteboard, so if you're using it as a interactive chalkboard, that's not the skill I'm looking for. I'm looking for you to be facilitating and utilizing it. So remote, the remotes are there, you utilize the students when the remote goes down. And making sure that you are able to navigate some of those tools very easily.
I would also add to, newer things like Canva, being able to design like flyers and things of that nature, because you just never know. It also just makes lessons more engaging. I spend a lot of time in classrooms, like trying to see things from the perspective of a teacher, because I am not a teacher. So I want to be very respectful when I'm trying to share with someone what a day in a life could be like. So, and I noticed that like being very familiar with the Google Suite is really important, but like knowing things like Canva, Adobe, Illustrators, those things never hurt you.
Slides to go.
Slides to go.
Yeah.
And all sorts of video content, obviously.
Should I include hobbies in my resume?
Yes, yes.
I definitely will help you with the extra,
Extracurricular.
extracurricular, like I might have an
Clubs.
elective or something, I might want you to.
Electives, clubs.
Yeah, after school is a big deal, and one of my questions on my interview is, what is a hobby that you can teach to someone else? So that is always something to think about.
And it's, schools don't only teach literacy and numeracy. In fact, to attract the student, frequently there's something else to bring them in to learn the literacy and numeracy through something else. So I have a friend of mine who got hired, they had a ton of people apply to this one school, her hobby was crocheting. The principal said that was so attractive to her, it seemed so interesting, that she interviewed her, and she said, well, we'd like to start a crocheting program for our kids at school. So she never would have thought of doing that. It was sort of an offhand thing. So that many times, it's your hobbies that are attractive, because that's what makes the kids engaged. And one of the most important things is, how do you engage kids and not just teach the boring stuff?
And I just want to say, the young lady asked, being a new teacher that didn't have experience, when we were just opening up the seed school, and looking at candidates, there were a lot of brand new teachers, but one of the things that I found interested were the people who had the extracurricular, the hobbies, the science as planting, and it was gardening, because that was something science. And, I was like, oh, but this person knows how to garden, and they enjoy it. The people who did the crocheting or did the newspaper club or did bike riding, those were the people that I was like, these are the people, because they will need to do clubs, right? You want someone with just not the academic experience as well. So those things should stand out as well. And the other thing that I did want to add was, as we interviewed, show up like you're coming for an interview, right? Don't show up in sweatpants and jogging pants, in a t-shirt, like you rolled out of bed. Like literally, even though we are in this day and age and people are more lax, and, you may not come in a blue suit and a tie and a shirt and, the white shirt and press, but come like you are coming professionally.
And
Right.
come on time.
Come on time, come professionally. Like I said, be early, be able to sit and see who's coming around, who's coming in and out, what the children are like. That's where you're going to get some of the information that you need to be able to answer the questions at your interview.
And if your hobby is cannabis gardening, you probably should not put it in your resume.
Just the gardening part.
I've sat on innumerable hiring committees. I ask one question, and the same question all the time. I ask, what was the best lesson you taught in the last few weeks, and how do you know it? Why do you think that's an interesting question to ask a student?
Yeah, they need time to think.
Wait, one.
See, if you were principal in Mr. Davenport's district, he does cold calls. So at his meetings of principals, he asks a question, if no hands are up, he calls on somebody.
I know what your answer should be, okay.
Yeah, hired.
You know that you taught something that students can aspire to their life.
Yes, go ahead.
You also get to hear what the candidates' indicators of success are and what they look for and what they see in students' reactions for what success looks like. Is it that they spark joy? Is it that they got 3 out of 4 questions right? It's interesting to know that about the teacher's perspective.
Good. Anybody else? Panelists?
I would just say, if you're asked that question, if I'm asking that question, it better be your last lesson. It should be the best, because it's like, if you gotta tell me this beautiful lesson you did 4 weeks ago and you haven't done one since, so you mean 4 weeks, what happened in the other last 4 weeks of school? You can refer to a lesson you did 4 weeks ago, but your last lesson should be the most inspiring. You can tell by your exit tickets when kids were telling me how much they learned, you can't get them out of the classroom. So I wanna know, like I said, if you gotta go back and think about it, because, if you ask me what was your best lesson, I'm gonna tell you the last one I taught, and this is why. So that's me.
Well, I'll give it to you with today.
Very
I
good.
did reteach for my kindergarten class on math, on, it was lesson 9.7, I remember the number. And the interaction with the kids was great.
So I'm gonna need a little bit more than, so I need exit ticket data. So one of the places that, teachers, not just new teachers, but teachers in general struggle is formative assessments. And so knowing those tools, whether you're using a checklist, conference notes, tools are important to use. You cannot just say, oh, I saw the engagement, based on what? How many students? You need to quantify that. 3 out of 4 questions were correct for 70% of our students. So right now, assessment is where we're living in, because what was so disappointing for me last year was our assessment said one thing, but then the gap in our New York State proficiency exams were very wide. And it's been the bane of our school year this year, is trying to figure out why that gap occurred, right? Because you need to live in data. And so it cannot be, oh, I saw the smiles on my student's face, and, everybody wanted another lesson and more time. Yeah, we need to live in the land of the tools, and the tools need to say that, Jose got this one correct, but not that one. I knew when sitting with Jose that he has this instructional gap, and so I sat there and I addressed it with him via conference, via reteach, via, small group. So all of those things need to be part of the toolkit, and trust me when I tell you, it is hard to get there, but it is something that, as teachers, we all need to develop.
The best teachers I've ever seen are coaches. They teach a specific skill, and the kids practice the skill, and then they practice it with another kid, and then another kid, and then it becomes part of whatever sport they're playing. These days, with all the cybermetrics and all, they videotape everything. And the kid can look at how he was executing the skill. So he's getting involved in his own assessment. So assessment is not only for the teacher. Assessment is a skill that you want the kid to learn. And that's challenging, but it becomes essential because we live in a world of assessment. That's just the way it is. It's not going to change. So how do we teach people to self-assess? And again, and there's no one way of doing it, and different people can do it different ways, but it's something that is somewhat new. And I tell people, teaching and learning should be one word. There should be no separation between them. They should be intermixed all the time. Anyway, anyone have any final questions or comments or anything else? Yes, Dr. Lamboy.
Thank you. To follow up on your comment about assessment, could you speak to some of the things you wish universities, education programs would do a better job at?
The explicit instruction. So we live in the land of leader arts. So what is our ID? What is the teacher model? What's the exemplary response you're looking for? And so what is the expectation of students? And how are you going to measure that outcome? So if we're not doing explicit instruction, having the teachers in real time plan a lesson, deliver the lesson in front of their peers, get feedback from their peers about the lesson, and then do it again from that feedback. So I think that explicit instruction and go through a role-playing model, and that for me is something that I feel is a huge gap in teacher education program.
And I would say the same. I did a study of people that stayed with my school for 4 years or 5 years to see what was it that kept the teacher retention. Why was this thing happening for us, or was I just lucky for those few years? And one of the things that they said was that their school was willing to teach us things in real time that we had not learned in school because the professors were teaching them the same sort of syllabus from like 20 years ago. So when they came out, there's certain things that they just weren't ready for, like new technology in the classrooms, like the new language that's being used for, talking to students who may be non-gender conforming or things of that nature. There are just a bunch of different things that are happening right now that if you're learning something, 10 or 15 years ago, when you get into the school, you only have a short amount of time to be a student teacher. That's not enough time to really absorb what teaching is going to be like. And also behavior management. So a lot of these seasoned teachers always talk to us about new teachers they seem to be taught, the basics, but nothing about managing the behaviors of students. Social emotional learning, that is a huge thing that's happening that our school focuses on. So there are certain universities, like Bank Street, the Bank Street model is like SEL. And then you'll get other people who are like, I really didn't start understanding or speaking that language until I stepped inside the school walls. So I guess some of the stuff that's happening needs to be in real time, that's being taught before they get out, so that you leave college, you get your certifications, and then you step into something that's parallel and not so completely different from what you've been learning. Like, I went to this school, so like if I sit in this school and then I go into a brightly lit, Promethean on the screen, touch screen, and then they're already like, we're behind, and then the school is almost a little bit ahead of us when I'm going to work. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
For me, I always ask for social emotional learning. Student teachers need to understand the whole child and the parent involvement. We always forget the parents, the families. But social emotional, because if the children are not happy, they're not going to learn. And our children in Harlem have many concerns. So when we talk about compassion, understanding the whole child and the social emotional learning is very important. Because once we have that basis, then the children could get into the academics. But the teacher also has to come in already understanding the whole child.
Yes.
So I actually have two questions. The first being, what are you looking for a teacher to achieve by the end of their first year teaching? And, okay.
No, go.
And the second one is a complaint that I've like recently heard from teachers that are new and end up job hopping from school to school is there's a lot of burnout and it's hard to change things within the system as a new teacher that doesn't have tenure and, you know, it's hard to break in of things of those nature. How do you empower new teachers to step up and make a difference when they don't necessarily have that support system?
May I go first?
Let me, if you need me
yeah.
to repeat any
Good
questions, I have
question.
them.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. I think that one thing that we all want to see is new teachers acclimating immediately, right? So just get in there and start talking, and in a very respectful way. And I think that one of the things that we always want to be careful of is this balance of advocating for yourself, seeing something wrong, and then maybe looking a little, I want to say rebellious, but a little bit kind of overstepping, right? So you don't want to overstep at any moment, but you do want to build relationships so in that way you have this opportunity to have brave conversations, not only with your administrators, but also with your colleagues. And I also think that it was really important, when we think about relationship building, we have to think about all that involves. And it means making sure that you have direct, difficult conversations with your colleagues so you're not caught up in gossip, you're not caught up in conflict that then escalates and then takes away from the work. So relationship building, acclimating, and then finding the balance of advocating for yourself and doing the work in support of the children.
I would quickly just say, growth for your first year, at the end of your first year. Your lesson in September planning should not look the same in June, right? You should be able to document your learning experiences throughout that whole year, how you interact with kids. Because I had to reflect a lot my first year, because it was, I'm like, oh, so these kids didn't pass. Those failures were my failures. I didn't recognize that at first. Like, if my kids didn't pass, I didn't teach it right. So I had to readjust me, like, it wasn't them, it was me. I might have thought I had a great lesson, but like you say, you do them exit tickets, you start figuring out, like, oh, Dad, all these kids didn't get it. I need to go back and what am I doing wrong? And so I want to see growth from where you started in day one to the end of the year. I want to have that conversation with you, documenting that growth. What was the turning point for you? And then the empowerment in the building, whatever. So I don't know where those people were working.
They weren't in 5.
Right.
Those people were
Right. So in Harlem.
They have the district and they have the
Right.
UFT that supports.
That's right. So in Harlem,
They weren't in 5.
and, our principals, they have committees, right? And they encourage new teachers to be involved in these committees and take part, and then make sure they have the right colleague mentoring you, so you aren't getting caught up in the minutia of what's going on, and you can stay focused and get that support, so you aren't going astray. And so that's and then a lot of things you can do too, that second year is volunteer for the right committees, and getting into the.
So what I was going to say was yesterday we did our tenure workshop, and the UFT does it in collaboration with the district. And myself and one of the district staff, we presented, and part of that is for your tenure track, right? So it's documenting your journey from year 1 through year 4, right? So you really don't want to be hopping around from place to place when you are on a tenure track, but it is building the relationships in your building, right? And even though every building has the minutia and the gossip and all that, right? But it still is being a part of a school community. stepping up as a leader, saying, you know what, I am a great crocheter, or I do photography, can I start a club? You know, it's part of the professional responsibilities that you have. It's being able to advocate for yourself in a way that says, wow, I really thought that was a great lesson. I don't understand why I got all these developings. But being able to come and have the brave conversation and say, what feedback is there? What can I do better the next time? So that by when you start out from September, that you are showing your growth. Because your tenure track is the growth from where you were year one until you reach year four. And it's being resourceful. It's using the UFT. The UFT has fabulous, some of our schools have teacher centers. We have fabulous resources from your CTLE credits that you need, your mentoring. So we make sure that all of those things are in place as well. You have chapter leaders in your buildings that are great resources. Myself, I'm a part, all of these principals here, we work collaboratively together on various things. So it's being able to advocate for yourself in a respectful way, but having those brave conversations about what it is that you are doing and reflecting on your practices to be able to show your growth. Because year one, I say all the time, I know you're not trying to discontinue a teacher in year one. Year one should be a freebie for everybody, unless kids are slamming themselves against the wall, right? But year one should be like a freebie because you're learning everything. You have everything to learn, from how to take attendance, how to contact parents, how do you, get your classroom management under control, how to do a good lesson plan. There's so much that you learn in year one that I always say, even to teachers, and I come in and I'll say, look, let me sit down with you. I even do that. My principals have said to me, Zena, I need you in here. Like, I need you to have conversations with people, right? And they may have been horrible year one, give them a minute. Let's put this stuff in place for them, right? And by year two, they'll say, gosh, this person has really grown. They've really turned around. Like, wow, I really shouldn't have been thinking about, discontinuing them. Like, they're doing well now. So it is a very, very reflective process, but it is still one about showing your journey from where you are year one to proving that you earn tenure when you get to year four.
I always
Okay?
say, you should have ownership of your own growth. Hopefully a principal would say, where do you want to be at the end of the first year? How do you intend to get there? How are you going to measure the growth? And if you're not making growth, understand it's nobody's fault. You simply have to pick another pathway. And some schools do that on a regular basis. I mean, after a lesson is observed, the best question the principal can ask is, how do you think it went? Rather than simply listening to this important person who has your life in the hands, but engaging you in a self-assessment. Thank you very much. Yes?
Would everyone be able to just say their emails so that
We will, we'll hand it out. Okay? But on my last advice, 4 things to be a successful teacher. Get a good night's sleep, eat healthy food, exercise, and get into a meditation format. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of kids. And many teachers in their first year begin to burn out because they're not taking care of themselves. So give serious thought to your own well-being in order to improve the kids' well-being. Thank you for coming very much.
Thank you.